Still do 7 NUFC Matters shows for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Thanks for...
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe. And it feels alright where the worlds collide. Manipulation stands to make us break. What's that you said is coming over you? You wish it upon a star. You wish it on a star. You are, you are, you are. You fight back, it's an all-out attack. It feels like I've been taken on the world's machine. Because I want it more than anyone can dream. You look back and it's all in the past. You tell me how you live by all the things you do. Well, you can be yourself, but maybe I'm not you. And it feels alright when they come and say to you,
Good evening, welcome to NUFC Matters, the three amigos, the perfect way to kickstart your weekend in a bit, I guess, because it's a Monday kickoff. We are here to give you all your usual stuff and a bit of sensible debate in the world of Newcastle United. And what a week. That was the week that was. And I'm not talking about Donald Trump and all these statements that he's come out and made. He's just sitting in his Oval Office again, ready to make another one. Christ, what else is he going to say? But anyway, we've got so much to talk about tonight. We haven't got enough time to do it. And we're going to struggle, I guess, to maintain any kind of positive direction because there's just been so much negative news. You know, it's difficult to put a positive spin sometimes on so much bad news, and it has been a bad news week. If Carlsberg did bad news weeks for Newcastle United, this would be another one to go with the other 1,000 that we've all experienced as supporters over the last few years. But we've got to go with it. We've got to get on with it. We've got a game to play on Monday, and then we've got the cup final, obviously, coming up next weekend. And I guess we've just got to have a little bit of faith, as George Michael said. But here we go. Let's get into it. And as always, you can control the narrative by dropping your questions into the chat tonight. Christopher D, I'm going to go with your questions. I know you weren't the first one to ask, but I've got to be honest, I do like your two questions. I like it when people come in with stuff that we haven't normally spoken about or we haven't really touched on. Christopher, I'll go with your question 2 first. He says, do we have leaks in the club again? It's not as bad as the Ashley days, but after the takeover, it was a tight ship. Nothing was getting out. Now we get news before club statement about injuries, etc. Great question, that, Chris. Do we have a mole? We had a mole under Steve Bruce, but is there a mole at the club? Because I've got to be honest, Mitch, Chris is pretty much right. I know for a fact that an ordinary person. He's not a YouTuber. He's not a fanzine guy. He's not involved with any of the organisations. He's a mate of mine, and I got a text off him this week to tell me, in no particular order, before it was released by any journalist, that whole season was over, that Botman faced surgery and his season could be over, and that Newcastle weren't going to appeal Anthony Gordon's sending off at the weekend. I got that from one person, and he's got, for me, he hasn't got any connections with football, as far as I know, with footballers. So clearly he's got that from someone else, and it's out there before the journalists have had time to type it into the computer. So I'd say the answer is yes. We pretty much have. I would say we have, if that kind of information is getting out there, Mitch, early doors.
I'd say, on the assumption that you had that, myself and Stu had similar, but from a very different source, would suggest somebody somewhere is speaking out of turn. And it makes you wonder why. What the hell's going on? Is it reflective of a general mood across the club at the moment? I find it a little disappointing if it's somebody directly within the dressing room whose nose is out of joint, because that's who it usually is. Because we certainly knew who Bruce's mole was while he was running around digging holes in the garden. It was quite tragic. This is a little bit more subtle and a little bit more nuanced. It doesn't seem to be being done to cause mischief. But something that has happened in the last few months is there's been a little bit of an information vacuum. And when that happens at any football club, somebody fills it. For one reason or another, somebody always will fill that vacuum. So, yeah, yes is the short answer. But exactly who and what their agenda is, I've got no idea.
Steve?
I don't know whether you could call it a mole. That's where I'm coming from. I think if we just take a step back to the gardener, what we had during Bruce's time is we had a one particular reporter from the Telegraph in Luke Edwards, who was very, very well connected and came up with some very, very good exclusive stories. Now we seem to have Craig Hope in the Mail, who again has nurtured obviously a relationship somewhere, or a number of relationships, and that's what his job is. At the end of the day, his job is to seek out information, they're not stories as such, but they're news items that are relevant. And I think that Craig's also very, very good on that aspect of his job, as well as being a very, very good journalist in terms of what he can write. I think that he's developed a relationship that allows him to perhaps hear things. And I think that it's quite possible that, and I don't know, I haven't spoken to Craig for must be for 9 months, maybe if not longer. But I think that the timing of some of his information is clever, and I think that, in some ways it's beneficial to the club for the stories to come out like that, and then they can perhaps dampen them a little bit at times. The Botman one's a perfect example. There was somebody on the internet saying he was out for the season. Botman reacted, and then the club was able to come out today at the press conference and explain with a little bit more detail what actually the issue is with Botman, and putting a timescale on that. all right, let's not beat about the bush here. We're talking about 3 weeks. We're talking about the club saying he could be back the last week in April, and the season finishes 3 weeks later anyway. So ostensibly, he's the person who reported on the internet could have been very right in his assumption, because just because the lad gets through an operation doesn't necessarily mean he'd be selected. And with 3 games of a season to go, would you, after such a long layoff, want to risk him for those last 3 games? That's a decision that Eddie has to make in 8 weeks' time. So I think it's I think in those 2 situations, in the Lewis Hall one, I mean, that's slightly different, because anyone who's been the match over the last couple of games and noticed that Lewis has come off in games. He's been limping. He's struggled a little bit from the form that he was in. I thought he had a good game against Liverpool, perfectly honest, considering who he was up against. I just thought that he was at times unsupported and ran ragged. But if he has been carrying an ankle knock that felt as though he would be able to get through, it sounds like perhaps slightly misdiagnosed, and he's suffered the consequences, because there's finally been what could have been a very, very hairline crack that has turned into something slightly worse, and requires him to be out for the rest of the season. I think you said at the very beginning, Steve, that it had been a bad week. I think it was a bad Sunday, and I think after that it's been a disappointing week in terms of some of the stories that have come out, some of the news items. But we're a football club. We have to get used to players being injured. That's the nature of football. You can be unlucky with injuries. You can be very lucky. You look at the way Tottenham have been this season compared to perhaps the way Liverpool have been. 2 clubs at the top of their game in terms of where they are, but playing squads that have one aspect struggled and another aspect seem to get through with any of their star players suffering any form of injuries. And I think that's just the way that it's the way that the toast landed on the carpet, isn't it? Whether it lands face down with the jam or face up. I think that this particular week has just been very disappointing for us. But you know what? We're in a cup final, and I'm just going to read out something, Steve, a conversation I had with a friend of ours. I'll not say who it is. You'll bump into him down at Wembley, I know that. But this friend of ours was talking about how he was disappointed with some of the stuff that's coming out, the doom and gloom. And I just said, you know what, lad? It's a cup final. It's 11 v 11. If you can't get up for wearing a black and white shirt in a cup final, then there's something wrong with you. Be you a player or a supporter. And I agree, on previous visits, we have been poor, but that's history. We're not going down there to do anything, because we can't rewrite history, but we're going down there to make history. That's what we've got to go up with. That's the positive aspect of where I am on a Friday after what's been a disappointing week. We're going down there in the week on Sunday as supporters to make history for Newcastle United. Not to dwell on the past, but to go out there and forget about what we've done. And I'm the last person probably that would say that, having been there in 76 and then every other time that we've been to Wembley and not seen us win, seen us only score 1 goal, etc., like thousands of other people. But I've got an air of positivity about where we're going to be on the 16th and how we're going to play and what we're going to do as a football club. So let's keep our chins up.
Okay, what does a mole stand to gain, George? Somebody asked in the chat earlier on. I mean, and do you think we've got one? Denise doesn't seem to think we have, but Dean, there he goes. What's the mole got to gain? Oh, George is having problems with his internet. Oh, there he's back.
It depends how they use it. The usual thing about is they're using all kinds of things to make kudos and sometimes make money. Well, I don't see that happening here. There's nothing that's been mentioned that we couldn't have foretold, surely. I mean, we knew Gordon was never going to get his a successful appeal against that red card, and Butman's been hovering, with is he, isn't he? And as Steve rightly says, young Lewis Hall's at times been running on empty by the end of games. So none of it's drastic as far as I'm concerned. And I just think it's more like a careless talk rather than having them all. And remember, this is Newcastle United. And I'd remind you that we won 3 times in the 50s and we were never predicted to win one of them. Arsenal were going to marmalise, were Blackpool and Stanley Matthews were going to run into the ground. And Manchester City were so good, we weren't going to get a kick of the ball. Well, the 11 in black and white made that all different because they went to win. They went to win, and that's how their season was. So, and all sorts of stories came out then, and all sorts of stories will now. As an ordinary supporter, I've just got one thing in my mind, is that's 11 black and whites fighting for the shirt and making sure we come home with a cup. That's all that matters to me. Yes, I grouse now and again about what's happening on the pitch, but once I've got that out of my system, I only want one thing. That's a black and white victory, and that's what I'm looking for. But I think it's too far to say that it's a mole. I mean, we really want to go down the road of Manchester United. And Ratcliffe, I gather, has now got all sorts of people signing non-disclosure agreements, like he did in his America's Cup team, in his racing car team. I mean, it's just potty. It's football. It's a people's game, or it was. After I got my season ticket renewal money, never mind. I'd hate to see we go down that way, but we have suffered from it in the past, and the lads are right. I mean, the Bruce thing was awful, but on the other hand, you didn't need to be in the club or on the fringes to get the stories. At pre-season, I used to go out my front garden, and usually sitting on the fence was Gale and Wilson and the ones that couldn't run a long way were sitting hurling their guts into this nice street. I could have took those pictures and sold them lovely, I suppose, if I wanted to be a mole. But I can't see with the information being given, is there really much advantage to anybody? I can't see it. I'd rather concentrate and getting behind the 11 that's gone and making sure that they've got a full support to do what we want them to do.
Okay, Yano, good evening. Says, I can't believe we didn't appeal Gordon's red card. Kuna appealed his attack on a member of staff from the opposition team. Elbow, back of the head, then a face grab, ripped his glasses off, reduced from 3 games to 2. Now, listen to Eddie's press conference today, Mitch. He was asked categorically about this. And he said that the people who needed to have the conversation at the club had the conversation, including lawyers, which I've got to be honest, I raised an eyebrow at. But, basically said that they had decided not to. Now, he was pushed on it to the point where they said, well, it could have given him a chance to play, but he didn't want to comment any further really on it. So what was your feelings on the fact that we didn't appeal it? Because, Gordon's a key player.
You have to say there's an element of what you have to lose. If he gets an extra game, he gets an extra game. So what? Also, based on that, if they felt like Gunye could get reduced from 3 to 2, he still misses the final. So maybe that was what the thinking was. It's a whole set of things going on here, and I think the response from the club and from the player has been to go to ground effectively on the whole thing, and I think that's very much what Eddie tried to do today in the press conference too. It's delicate with the extra bad news in with other bad news. You got to remember there was a section of fan base didn't want Gordon in the first place. And I would lay money on the section of the fan base that's been the first to turn on him after that is probably the same section.
Good point.
And so 2 years hard work from that young man effectively is down the drain, thrown away in a moment of madness. And he'll be feeling that, no doubt. I don't think there's any amount of meditation and visualization will help him get his head around that. It was worse than petulant. It was worse than disappointing. Certainly unprofessional and utterly unnecessary. Yes, we were dealing with a referee who was at best inconsistent. The player in question was probably lucky to still be on the pitch in some ways. Got away with something that would have been a foul on a rugby pitch, let alone on a football pitch. But if ifs and ands were pots and pans and all that, and so I think they've obviously looked at it and thought, well, if the best we are going to get is a reduction from 3 to 2, let's keep it out of the news, keep it quiet, let it go away, and get on with the situation. I know there's a section of the fan base feels disappointed that there's not been some sort of public apology. That said, as I've said, there's another section of the fan base that would have wanted to string him up on the Gallagher if he did. Because, like I say, I think there's a definite correlation probably between those who didn't want him in the first place and those who've started calling for his neck, you know. Dreadfully disappointing is an understatement. Frustration's palpable through the fan base, through the club. Somebody somewhere has probably had a very harsh word with him behind closed doors. As long as he can learn from it and grow and we get the benefit of it down the line, then something good may come of it. But right now, added to the 2 main injuries, that makes we're stripped basically of the best of the left-hand side of our team. Is now totally gone, and we have to rethink everything, not just for the Cup final, but for the Premier League season as well. He's missing Premier League games too. And so it's probably that taking a less said, the better approach to it. It's done, it's dusted, get your head around it, and away we go. Can you describe it as violent conduct? You know, come on, what you describe as violent conduct on a football pitch these days is almost laughable. That's the way it's gone, unfortunately. Personally, if you're going to get sent off, I would at least love them to see him spark the lad out. You know what? If you're going to do it, do it. You know. Do a Robin Friday, spark him out, take your shirt off and flick the V's as you walk off the pitch. If you're going to date, you might as well date in style. Bill, you're absolutely right. I think you would have had a little interaction with my elbow by accident. But I don't think people are clever enough these days to do things like that. There was an art of shithousery like that some people were exceptionally good at. But I find it exceptionally frustrating. And it's just compounded the situation in a way that I think none of us could have really predicted.
Steve, should we have appealed the card? I can see lots of people saying in the chat that, you know, some people fearing that we would have got an extra game suspension. Some people thinking that they should have, you know, because the whistle had been blown. Some people thinking it was, you know, Newcastle should have had a penalty. Well, it was offside, so that wouldn't have happened. But yeah, look, mixed opinions of whether we should have done it.
Yeah, it's ifs and ands, isn't it? You know, that it's one of those things where you could argue that in one respect it didn't deserve even a yellow, another respect it deserved nothing more than a yellow. I'm going to throw a different ball into this mix. Can we lay some of the blame at Michael Oliver? Because on Saturday in the Palace Millwall game, Michael Oliver didn't see a challenge by the Palace goalkeeper, the Millwall goalkeeper on Mateta, which ended up with 25 stitches in his head, and he deemed it only a yellow card.
Not just that, mate. 25 stitches, and he had to see two specialists, one who helped him save part of his ear, and the other one, a specialist who helped work on the cosmetic side of things so his ear doesn't turn into some sort of unholy mess when it all heals.
Like a John Paul Getty second ear, for example. Exactly, you know. I mean, but what happened there was shocking, and for Michael Oliver not to see it and to just deem it as a yellow, and then eventually VAR intervening, the lad getting suspended for 3, and now it's been increased to 6. Did something happen, I wonder, over the weekend with PGMOL? Did a warning go out to say you're going to have to be a bit stronger, guys? You're going to have to be a bit tougher in your decision making. And of all the referees who would want to get tough against Newcastle United, what Anthony Taylor, for God's sake, you know, who would brandish a red card for Newcastle against Newcastle United, at the drop of a hat, and on this case, it was at the drop of a Brighton player, you know, who let's face it, made a meal of it. They've been kicking lumps out of him throughout the game, but I wonder whether or not something did happen over the weekend, whether or not the PGMOL issued some sort of reminder to referees saying, "Look, we've had a bad one. Michael's had a bad one, another bad one on Saturday. We need to make sure that we're making the decisions that we're making." We stick by and not have this situation where we need to drag VAR into it. And I think he went for the easy option, which was the red card, because I don't think they wanted, because they knew the hands were raised, and I think if they had have gone to VAR and VAR had had a word with them after it, I think there might have been more to it. But I'm just throwing that out there. In terms of what subsequently happened, you know what? If you're going to raise your hand, Mitch is right. If you're going to raise it, make sure you absolutely smack the kid. It was petulant. But he's going to have to live with it. We have to live with it. We have to move on from it. It's just the nature of the game. I think, you know, the nature of our week. He wasn't having a very good game to begin with. Hasn't had for a number of weeks now. You know, just seems to be slightly off it. And I just wonder whether he's just another one of our players who's played a little bit too much and is getting a little bit more frustrated as the game was going on. He does take an awful lot of stick. He does get marked out sometimes, because I think that there are players in the Premier League who feel as though that if you have a go at Anthony Gordon, that he will react. And I think he's done remarkably well over the seasons that he's been here, that he hasn't reacted, unlike when he played against us for Everton, where he always seemed to be volatile and always seemed to be the sort of player that was up for a fight, up for a scrap, up for, you know, having given back what he'd received, that type of thing. And I think he is a bit of a marked player because he is so creative for us. And I think we're missing him. We can cry as much as we like, but it's gone, it's past. And the situation here, and that even lawyers were involved in making the decision, that, you know, it should be left to the coach. If the coach wants to make an appeal against it, there shouldn't be hires up within the club who are turning around and going, no, I don't think it's worth it, because it's the manager who has to live and die by the decisions that he makes. And I think that it would be far better if Eddie had decided, I want to appeal, they'd allowed him to appeal, and then if it gets extended for whatever reason, then so be it. But to hear that lawyers and people, this is when football starts to get, and the game starts to get a little bit more ridiculous, you know, lawyers making decisions on behalf of a club on whether or not to appeal a red card, and their opinion. What does their opinion stand for? You know, unless they're already in the ear, as they say, with people down at the down at the PGML and the FA who are on some sort of panel who would said, "Don't bother, mate. I would recommend that you don't bother because this is what's going to happen," and the lawyers are doing it. That could well be it, but I wouldn't have thought so. So we just have to get on with it, Steve.
Okay, George, what's your feelings?
Well, there's lots of feelings. The first one is that I'll go to something I've talked about on here before and elsewhere. This stupid offside rule where the flag doesn't go up to the player involved in offside, goes for the ball. If when he was offside, and Steve and I were shouting offside long before the whistle went, the whistle had gone then and the flag had gone up then, it might not have been an incident. There might have been some pushing and shoving, but I don't think it would have got as hot as it did at the finish. But once it did get hot, and Anthony Gordon raised his hands the way he did, where was he going to go? What did he just give Anthony Taylor an easy job? In my opinion, it wasn't that Anthony Taylor was quick. He just was given an easy job. I'm going to be firm. Red card. And to be honest, if you're really into sport and football and it's all it means to it, the fairness and all the rest of it, if that had been the other way around, we've been screaming red card as well. The ones that bother me, but it does show, and Anthony Taylor showed throughout that game, the mess our referees are in. Inconsistency is appalling. You look at the number of shoulder charges, blocks that Van Dijk's done this year, and actually drawn blood. I mean, Anthony Gordon didn't draw any blood. He just pushed the bloke on the back of the face, the back of the head. But Van Dijk, dropped Gordon was one of the people he dropped it up here. He's done it about 4 or 5 times this year. And not once has he had a card or of any description, and then he gets away with it. That's what I want to see got rid of. But Anthony Gordon just epitomizes it. Not Anthony Gordon, sorry, Taylor just epitomizes it. At what a state our referees are in at the moment. He's one of the referees. I thought we got rid of it when we got rid of Mike Dean and Graham Paul and the players like that, refs like that, who thought the game was about them. I mean, Mike Dean blew the whistle and stood up like a bloody sergeant major on the top of his tippy toes so that you knew he was there. And Anthony Taylor's the same. You know, the game's about him as much as it is about 22 players. So that's what I'd like to see rid of. But Anthony Gordon, once he lifted his hands, he puts himself and his club in an impossible position. Once the hands are open, the red card's done. That's it. End of. And I can see why they didn't appeal it, because it would have been nonsensical in my view, and we would have risked the penalty. I think for wasting our time. So it's all sad, but in all these things, for everybody's issue, every inaction and action, there's got to be a reaction. And the reaction comes at Wembley for somebody who's got the bottle, got the guts to go and do what Anthony Gordon should have been doing, and make a name for themselves, big style. I mean, and Anthony Gordon, when he had that petulant kickabout with Trippier when he was with Everton in the Gallagher corner, when I come home from that, I was thinking, oh God, I don't want that little shite in my team. Well, I'm looking for him now every time. I'm desperate for him, because that spirit, that will to win, that want to be first, is what you get with somebody who sometimes it boils over the surface like it did on Sunday, and you've got to live with that. Look at his attitude at the Brentford game when he first came, and he was substituted. He was kicking off big style. And some of the coaching staff, Dave Jones particularly, put his arm around him and said, "How are you?" You know, and he calmed down and he got the drift. So we've had 2 years of brilliant Anthony Gordon from my point of view, and he's lapsed. But there are mitigating circumstances. But my mitigating circumstances are the flag had gone up right when the offside was called, and Anthony Taylor had been in a more less I want to be me attitude that he's had. Because some of the Brighton players that piled in afterwards pushed harder than Anthony Gordon did, but nothing was done to them. Not a thing. And I didn't come and say, "Oh, look at this, look at that." So let's get it out of our system and look forward to when Anthony Gordon's in another cup final, or chasing with our European place when he comes back. But it's not the end of the world, and let's focus on winning a cup final.
I think you're touching on a couple of things that I think modern day referees are really bad at handling. Firstly, intent.
Yeah.
And it's actually what Gordon got sent off for. There was intent there. Whether it was executed in a poor way, it was the intent. And you sometimes see that, where you see players get pulled up for something where it's clearly not intentional. And then they end up with a yellow or a red. And then the other thing, on the flip side, what are we going to do about simulation?
Yeah.
Go back to the start of the season, that confrontation between Burton Diaz and Shea, where Shea got his marching orders. And I'm sorry, Burton Diaz, I hope every time he sees that replayed, he dies a little bit inside, but he doesn't, because he's obviously got a brass neck. And you see it, and it's getting worse. So we're getting worse examples of players going down like they've been involved in a machete attack when somebody's flicked a finger at them. And these are all things which are just not being dealt with properly in the modern game by officials, and shows again about the level of officiating, why we as fans get absolutely frustrated about it. And yes, we're no longer in an era where you can have a couple of players trading blows in the centre circle and the referee makes them shake hands and get on with it. I don't think you can do that anymore. But there's certainly got to be a meeting in the middle somewhere where they've got to get hold of the cheats and the simulators, and they've got to be sure and consistently they are punishing people who show intent, like what Gordon did.
Can I throw a curveball in here? If you go back to the 70s, 80s, and early 90s, you sometimes had a guy refereeing you maybe once a season. You look at, go back to the 80s, go back to Trelford Mills, for example. I think that was probably the only game he had against us that season. And he had a nightmare. We all know that. But with the introduction of PGMOL, and we've got the professional referees, and we've got this little band of brothers that hang around together, there's a kind of familiarity. And you see it with the likes of Anthony Taylor and one or two others. When the camera focuses in and they're talking to players and they call them by their first name. Players at the top of the game I'm talking about, players at Man United, players at Liverpool, players at Tottenham. And I don't think that is a good sign, because I think what that does is it tends to become a little bit, or come over as a bit matey. Virgil, you shouldn't have done that, mate. Virgil, come here. That type of attitude that you see happening. And I think that's in itself, because those referees have a personality that they're wanting to project, but they also want a friendly relationship with the players on the pitch, because they think that friendly relationship will then spread into the game itself, and the player will be a little bit more approachable, if you like, not give him so many problems because it's a mate, that type of attitude. Michael Oliver's totally different. He's like blinkered, isn't he? He doesn't even talk. You don't even see him talking to his linesman during the game, or his assistant referees or anything like that. He's totally switched and in the zone, sometimes too much in the zone. Possibly, but I think that's more to do with his personality. And having met him in the Irish Centre on a number of occasions, he is a bit like that, even when he's just walking through the crowd to get to the bar, and people talk to him and he's like blinkered. I've got to get a pint, I've got to get a pint, and I've got to get a pint type of attitude or personality. But I just wonder whether or not that is one of the side effects of having professional referees, that you get that familiarity, that you get that friendship, and it rubs off on their decision making, where they're not as harsh with some of those bigger players, or they let them get away with a little bit more than they would if it was an Anthony Gordon, for example, who they don't have a relationship, or possibly even just because it's Newcastle United and we're stuck up here in the north, and they don't referee us as frequently as they do a Man United and Arsenal, at Chelsea, the so-called big games, if you like. So I just thought I'd see whether or not that would create a bit of a stir or not. I'm just an observation, you know.
Well, Steve, it's a very fair one, because as the other Steve will know, when we do those other days, one of the things the material I use gives you is a commentary on the referee. And there's some seasons, and we've just done one where Stuart Atwell was the name. Nearly 6 times, either home or away, we had him refereeing our matches. And surely after that number of times, you'll know all the players by first name. And I'm not sure that's that's entirely a good thing, but it is something to ponder, Steve. It's bound to happen when you've got a limited number of referees and a vast number of games now. It makes you wonder if the pool of referees isn't big enough, and they don't want it bigger, because then they wouldn't get as much money, would they? They'd have to share it out a little bit. So
and you've also got to look at the fact that sometimes the guy's refereeing, sometimes he's the fourth official, and sometimes he's sitting in the VR box. So there's every possibility you could have a referee in your one game, he could be the fourth official in your next game, and he could be in the VR box the next one. So 3 times, and if he hasn't had a very good game, or if you've shown him up in the first game, who's to say that it's only human nature that you're going to be a little bit more awkward with the manager if you've had an issue on the line, that you're then running the game of that manager's team. And I think that this is where I think the pool isn't big enough for whatever reason, whether it's something more than the fact that it's a bit of a boys' club that's in operation, and they seem to think to have this standard that they are better than perhaps what goes on in the Championship or what goes on in the lower leagues. Having said that, I've probably just blown my own argument after we go back to that display of refereeing that we had in the Birmingham City game, the previous round of the Cup, where the referee was diabolical, but let everything go, and there was no VAR, and the fourth official was making his own tea, no doubt. So, you can argue it every way.
Well, as I say, it's Steve Rachel know that I comment when I'm doing those other days about the referees, and it amazes me how many times we get the same referees refereeing Newcastle United, how many times the same referee in Manchester United, etc. And it's been a bit of an eye opener for me. The other thing I go back to is you lads talking about your shithousery. God knows how they would manage with somebody like Joe Harvey these days. Believe me, if somebody was given the 2 targets for opposing teams were Bobby Mitchell and Ernie Taylor, and if they were, Stanley Huddersfield was the one I remember because I was at the game. He was kicking Bobby all over the place. So Bobby Mitchell changes places with Joe Harvey in the team for about a quarter of an hour, and that's enough. After that, Stanley Fat's limping. And the other one I remember is another prominent player who was used to kicking all the players that mattered. And the story is allegedly that he was found crawling up the stairs up to the dressing room at half time because he happened to collide into Joe Harvey's elbow in his nether regions. So if you wanted shithousery, you can go back a long way for that.
Okay, we are 45 minutes into the show. We are going to lighten the mood slightly. If you are easily offended, go make a cup of tea. Thanks, as always, to everyone for sending these in. Jimmy Moore has been on fine form this week, as has Jimmy Wilson, the 2 Jimmys leading the way with their messages. We'll start with a few signs. This one, Rain forward, beer, take a right. Keith Richardson, a sign few could resist, mate. Yes, pubs definitely getting in on the act with these signs, aren't they? This is a very simple one as well from Keith. Trespassers will be headbutted. Keep out, basically, keep out. Bradford on Avon having an interesting festival. Might give that one a miss.
Oh, right.
I was going to go, but I couldn't give a toss.
And customer questions on Amazon. Can you replace the spray when you run out? If you run out of pepper spray, you need to move to a different neighborhood. And McDonald's replied to your review. Rarest pupper posted, waited for 45 minutes. Not a single employee came and washed my hands. What the heck is employees must wash hands sign there for? Response from the owner. Interesting. And another review. Durex Play Sweet Strawberry Lube. Most helpful reviews. I ran out of strawberry jam, and so I used this to put in the kids' rice pudding. They couldn't tell the difference, and they're pretty intelligent, says Christian Hall.
Oh, dear.
And Gary, thanks for this one. What kind of Doritos do they have in Japan, I wonder? This one as well. I think they prefer to be called traffic wardens. Cock, report at the assembly point. Car park grass. Very clever. And this one, don't let anyone tell you the tacos don't work miracles, lads.
Oh, very good.
Very good, Jimmy. Thank you for that. Love this one as well. Kerry Ray said, I've literally waited my entire lifetime to see this.
Cow over the moon.
Yeah, cow jumping over the moon. Excellent. And but do they blow up or catch on fire like the other Teslas? Interesting news week this week in the Daily Mail. Foul-mouthed parrot stuck on a roof for 3 days greeted firefighters sent to rescue it by telling them to F off. Certainly was British journalism at its finest. People do know I like a Star Trek post. Well, I've had a few this week. Gary, I love this. What a piece of cheesecake that is, lads.
That is brilliant, that.
Absolutely.
And follow that up with this most comfortable hunk of junk in the galaxy. I don't think the missus would be too happy if I transformed my settee into that. And this one, football related, is excellent. What about that for a coffee table, lads?
That's phenomenal.
Imagine that. Could have a St. James's Park coffee table. Excellent, that. Really good idea. I bet there's blokes all over the UK looking at that thinking, oh, I wouldn't mind one of them. Jeremy Clarkson, don't worry if your A-level grades aren't any good. I got a C and 2 U's, and I'm sitting here deciding which of my Range Rovers to use today. Derek replies, I didn't do A-levels. I was expelled from school and turned to a life of crime. I, too, am deciding which of your Range Rovers to use today. And I've got a big crack, says one egg. Stop teasing me. I'm not even hard yet, says the other. And when you come home drunk, lads, and you've got to climb through the window. People do like to send us singing ones, as you know, lads. Here's one. Our house in the middle of the street. Very good. Alexa, play Madness. Thank you, Edward, for that one. And celebrity cover collection. Joe Pasquale sings the greatest hits of Barry White. 22 seductive tracks to get you in the mood. I don't think we'll ever hear that record. I certainly won't be adding that to my album of the month anyway. We used to get a few of these in lookalikes. We used to get a few of these crossovers. Here's Nigella Dawson doing the cooking. And what does a horny toad say, lads? Rub it.
Oh.
And it's been 40 years and I still don't know what studio means. Yes, I think we all in the same boat. Anyone Googling it? Find out what it means. Stick it in the chat. A couple of jokes. A man died when a pile of books landed on him. Police say he only had his shelf to blame.
Oh.
And have you ever noticed that anybody driving slower than you is an idiot and anyone going faster than you is a maniac?
Yep.
Very true. And the Russian acrobat from our human pyramid team has been deported, leaving us without a leg to stand on.
Oh, crazy.
And a wife complains, our wall clock almost killed my mother today. It fell off the wall just seconds after she got up off the sofa. Husband mumbles, bloody clock was always slow. And eucalyptus are the only plants named after what they would say if pruned.
Oh.
Very, very good, Edward. Very good. Good play on words. I see what you did there. And Craig Marson just cost £407 in Specsavers, being cheaper getting a Labrador. And here's some safe sex, lads.
Oh, yeah, me.
Oh.
No.
And tea is an evil substance. Tea is much more dangerous than beer. Please avoid drinking tea. I discovered this last night. I drunk 14 beers up until 3 a.m. at the pub, while my wife was just drinking tea at home. You should have seen how angry and violent she was when I got home. I was peaceful, silent, headed to bed as she shouted at me all night long, and even into the next morning. Please, ladies, if you can't handle your tea, just don't drink it.
Oh.
Cheers. Cheers, Gary. Another one from Gary as well. I'm going to inspect your vehicle to make sure it's fit for the roads. The roads.
The roads.
Good point, Gary. Good point. And I bought these 6 months ago, and my neighbour still thinks it is a dog shitting all over his porch and driveway. Very clever. This one, tweet of the week from Jimmy. When you die, which body part dies last? The pupils. They dilate.
Oh, Jimmy, man.
Yeah.
Oh.
And this is the look of someone in a rocky relationship, lads.
No.
Following on the movie trend. Rare photo of a shark stepping on Lego as Jaws. Cheers, Colin. And a badly placed advert in the newspapers this week. Wardrobe specials underneath the headline, Joanne husband lived in flat with dead wife's body in wardrobe for 48 hours. I'll never forget my granddad's last words. Stop shaking the ladder, you little. And another one from Jimmy. What is this, lads? I've got no idea, Jimmy.
Yes.
I've got no idea. It's an interesting one, Jimmy. That's what it is, mate. But thank you for sending in all your tweets this week. I want to know why this orange is so angry. And here's the squeegees, lads.
Oh.
How deep is your glove? Thank you, Colin. I wasn't going to sing that one. I will sing this one, though. When I was walking in men's piss.
Oh,
God.
And
It's the old Gallagher Blue, that.
after they had their first team photo, they decided on a change of name. West Anglian, North Kenton, Etonian Rugby Society.
Yeah.
And knock, knock, lads. Who's there? Werewolves of London.
Oh, Colin, man.
Thanks, Colin. I kept that one towards the end just to cheer the lads up. Coming into the winning stable now, wasting no time at all. Bar worker shot, and then the advert above the shop. Bartender wanted.
I wanted.
Star Trek. Thursdays are very depressing. If you think Thursdays are bad, just wait 2 more days. It will be a Saturday.
Oh, dear me.
Oh.
Love it. And me making a sandcastle with my grandpa, everyone else at the crematorium. Another Star Wars one. Oops, wrong folder, says R2D2. And yesterday I booked a private taxi for the airport. When I arrived at my destination, the driver gave me his business cards for future bookings. Dr. Ramanand Tripathi, PhD. Wow, I was surprised and quizzed him. Why are you driving a taxi with such a high qualification? He replied, doctor is the short form of driver. Then what about your PhD? Pothole dodger, he replied. I hired a handyman and gave him a to-do list. When I got home, he only had done items 1, 3, and 5 got done. Turns out he only does odd jobs.
Oh.
Yeah, me.
Top 3, then here we go, lads. Ian Hull, thanks for this. Dr. Frankenstein entered a bodybuilding competition and discovered he had seriously misunderstood the objective. Number 2, Anita Jobby. Same here, and nothing worse. Number one is this one. I've just noticed that -4 degrees looks like a guy taking a dump.
That's good, that. Very good.
Thank you to Spenny, who has won Tweet of the Week this week. Keep them coming in. Don't forget, you can email us nufcmatters1892@gmail.com or send them over to our Facebook group or Facebook page, and we'll pick them up off there. Okay, just want to remind you as well that the membership package is back. The pen, the pin badge, the key ring, and the beer mat, and the fridge magnet, and your membership card, and entry into the monthly draw, which will take place at the end of March. It is a one-off fee of £25. Get yourself to nufcmatters.co.uk to buy your membership today. Okay, quick turnaround. Gonna have the ads back after this. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. Find them at their website, skipsandbins.com. Contact them, www.skipsandbins.com/contact. A big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at their website, mrvickies.co.uk. Email info@mrvickies.co.uk or telephone 01768 210 102. A big thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. 2 crew, driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges. All excursions included. Find them at their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email them at beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. Just £30 per person deposit. There are no strangers on our tours, just friends you haven't met yet. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. You can find them at their website, media-arts.co.uk. If you want to listen to us as a podcast, you can go to Sports Social Podcast Network. You can also find us on iTunes, Spotify, and your other podcast providers. If you want to help support the channel, hit the thumb up, which is the like button. Click share to share to your other social medias. Click join to join the channel. And click the subscribe button. We've also got links in our description for buy us a coffee and to be a Patreon member. Some events coming up. An afternoon with Sir Les Ferdinand, 6th of April, 12 till 4. Tickets available from ticketmaster.co.uk. No Covers takes place at the Clooney, Lilac Lane, Ryder and the Chris Norris Band. Tickets from theclooney.com or by telephone in 0191 230 4474. An evening with Steve Howie and Steve Watson, hosted by Joe Allen, takes place at the Tyneside Irish Centre on the 27th of June. Tickets for that are from newcastlelegends.com. An evening with Peter Beardsley and Chris Waddle takes place at the Tyne Theatre and Opera House on the 23rd of January 2026. Box office 0844 246 1000 or website tynetheatreandoperahouse.tv. An evening with Bad Manners takes place on Friday the 30th of January 2026 and tickets available from ticketmaster.co.uk. And we have copies of The Entertainers 1992 to 1997, Kevin Keegan's Legacy, available from newcastlelegends.com. And if you're watching on X tonight, jump over onto YouTube. All you need to do is search NUFC Matters and subscribe. It is free and we do 7 shows a week. Christopher D asked a very good question, which got us all talking in part 1 of the show. So part 2, I'll give you the opportunity to ask you your first question, which is our second. Should we accept that Isaac is sold, Mitch? He needs the next level at 25-26. He can't wait for us to catch up. And we can really push on with £120 million plus cash injection, i.e. Liverpool, Coutinho, Villa, Grealish. Now, It's a valid question, isn't it? It's a valid question because he's one of our blue chip players. You could be asking the same question about Gordon. You could be asking the same question about Bruno still. Bruno is still qualified as one of our blue chip players. And I guess to a lesser extent, maybe Lewis Hall, if he was fully fit, or Joe Linton, who you could still get a really good fee for because he's a Brazilian international and he's somebody who has improved massively under this manager and will be worth, I would imagine, more than we paid for him. So I guess you could ask that question, but it's an interesting one. Do we accept so if we don't get Europe this season, is he going to stay, Mitch? But it's that particular way of asking the question. We accept that we are going to sell. Yeah, are we going to sell? Should we accept that Isaac is sold? Stay with Christopher's question.
No. Why do we accept second best? That's what we've got to stop doing. We've got to be aspiring to be better. It would also be a frank admission that the system's beaten. It would be us just putting up the white flag saying, right, we're just here to be. We're just here to exist. We're not going to go on. We're not going to crack on. You've beaten me. We're not coming back from this. We're just giving up. Sod that. Right now, I guess the mood in the camp right now at the minute for the fan base is exceptionally low. And now people are preparing themselves for the worst. Stockholm Syndrome kicking in big time. But to accept that, I would not accept that with my dying breath. Thank you very much. We can't, as a football club, accept it for a number of reasons. More than anything else, it will be a frank submission to the Premier League and the cartel that wants to hold us back, that they've won.
Steve?
I think I agree entirely with Mitch. Let's look at the Villa situation. Villa sold Grealish, and at least two of the players who bought with that money aren't even at the club anymore. They were cleared out very, very quickly and lost money on them. I think Villa's re-emergence was more to do with Unai Emery than it was to do with Jack Grealish no longer being at the club and the money being wisely or so-called wisely invested. I think the Coutinho one was an interesting one. From the moment he left the football club, he was never the same footballer. Whether somebody at Liverpool saw something about him or something with him, perhaps they felt as though they had an offer that was just too good, bearing in mind that the player was struggling at Liverpool, and there was other players that they felt as though they would get an awful lot more out. And at the time, Liverpool weren't pulling up trees either, were they? I think those two situations are two totally different situations. Newcastle, those two clubs were in decline when they sold. Newcastle are on the up. You've got a player that's getting them on the up. So why would, as you're on that upward trajectory, would you then jeopardise that in the hope that the players that you would then bring in would take you to the next level, while the rest of the players that you've got and the rest of the squad are stagnate? I think that it would be a bad move. I think it would be a bad move towards the fans. I don't think it would necessarily benefit Isak, or that's the player is the last person that people harp on about when a transfer is made. But I think Alexander Isak and Newcastle United, I think he's getting an awful lot more playing for Newcastle United than he will if he's playing for one of the European clubs, because he just become then another player in the mix. Whereas here he is literally the diamond at the top of the crown, if you like. I think sometimes a player can make a move and it can turn out to be a wrong move. And I think in both Coutinho and to a certain extent Grealish, that's been proved the case.
George, it's an interesting question. What's your feelings? Would you be up for doing that? Do we accept that he's already gone in the summer? If Newcastle wanted to take the money and invest it,
accept nothing. I accept nothing that makes Newcastle United worse than anybody else. I'm only here for one reason. I want Newcastle United to be the best. And if we can't get the best players, then we've got no chance. If we can't keep the best players. I remind you, was it last season or season before when we got pushed into selling 2 young players because of CSR, we were told. The reason we got pushed into it, allegedly, was that the hierarchy had put 100 million on Bruno and they thought that they could get 100 million in the summer. Well, nobody wanted him because nobody could buy him, nobody could afford him. And if we've got 120 on Isaac, we're in the same boat. But apart from that, let's forget that side of it. The only thing that matters to me is seeing Newcastle United at the top of the tree. And there's only one way to the top of the tree, and that's to have the best players. And currently, he is the best young striker in Europe, arguably the world at the moment, when he's on his game. So no, I wouldn't accept for any money that we get in our minds that he's going to be sold. It's defeatist talk. It's Neil's right. It's telling the rest of the world that they've not the stuffing out of it. Nobody's not the stuffing out of me. Yeah, I have me odd grouse, but stick a knife in my arm and I still bleed black and white, more than black and white sometimes. So no, I don't accept that we've got to sell them at all. In fact, quite the reverse. In fact, the lads will remember I got so heated over the notion that we might sell Bruno for 100 million. I think on one programme, might have been on here or on one of the others, I said, well, if they do, St James's Park's seen the last of me. I actually used those words. That's how strongly I felt about it. And, it just beggars belief that we would want second best. There is no, absolutely not. And that's what you'd be doing if you sold Isaac in the current climate.
So, Mitch, there's the alternative question from Mark Byers. He says, do the lads think Newcastle would turn down a serious £150 million bid for Isaac, though? No idea who could afford that, mind.
Yeah, Mark answers the question at the very end. Where would that come from? I don't think there's a single team right now, after the Club World Cup and the financial doping in plain sight that's going to happen after that, that's going to help a number of teams who've been piping off Gianni Infantino and others. That might change.
Yeah.
But I don't think it will be a Premier League club. It will be somebody outside the Premier League. And I guess from a PSR perspective, you'd have to consider it. If a ridiculous bid came in that could correct that balance sheet for us and give us a boost, however, how do you replace him and who do you replace him with?
Exactly.
That's the dilemma. That would be the dilemma. Look, if we get to the end of the season and Isaac isn't happy and he wants to move and he wants to, get people agitating for that, again, different situation. But he would go on our terms. And our terms would mean there's only a handful of clubs that could even think about discussing a transfer like that. Post-Club World Cup, that might turn into 4 or 5. But it's a... we know we've got a delicate situation in some respects, but at the same time, he's on a long-term contract and he's our player. But contracts genuinely are not worth the paper they're written on these days in football, it seems.
Steve?
I think there are people within the club that would listen to a 150 million plus bid. I think there are also people within the club that would say no, definitely not. I think I put Eddie Howe in that camp, almost certainly. So I'm giving you a flavour on where I think the other side of it's coming from. Plus, in the current climate, you've got no guarantee that Eddie would get the funds if funds did come in for the sale of ESAT. Because it could then turn into because we haven't qualified Europe, another balance in the books period, and that wouldn't do us any good at all. We've got more chance of getting into Europe with Isak in the team and part of the squad than we have him not being there. We've got to be fighting for Europe for the rest of this season, which is probably where we're going to sort of move into when we start talking about the game on Monday night and what Eddie needs to do or not do, should do and shouldn't do. But if we've got to see this season through, we've got to make sure that we're in a position where we can turn down offers for Alexander Isak by saying no, he's our player, and we've got European football next season in the Champions League. That's the easiest and quickest way of putting the argument to bed. But I do believe that there will be people who, no matter who the player is, would listen to an offer, a high offer, whether it was for a Bruno, a Joe Linton, or an Alexander Isak. I hate to say it, but that's the nature of football clubs and the nature of the particular business and the way things are done. We tend to look at it with our heart on our sleeve. These people look at a balance sheet and they forget that they've got their own little 5-year plan, because all of a sudden their 5-year plan is, and it means we're also selling Alexander Isak for 150 million, but it's still a 5-year plan. This is what would happen, it's shifting sands with these people. But no, I know where Mark's coming from, and I know on the other respect, the question that we had, as we answered it earlier, and but the best way to put the whole thing to bed is to make sure we qualify for the Champions League this season.
George, if it was the reverse and somebody came in?
Well, football being the money game that it is, of course somebody would want to look at it. It would be silly if they didn't. But surely you then need to ask as well, right, so we've got 150 million, who we're going to buy, who we're going to replace them with. And there aren't many you could replace them with without spending possibly as much, or if not more, than you'd get for Isak. The talent like his, and we would need somebody to replace him like that, that need to be bought. I'd rather concentrate on thinking, who can we buy to support Isak, to make him even better? Who can we get to support him to win the Ballon d'Or? Who can we, that's the sort of positive conversation I want, not the conversation that says he's going out the door. On the other hand, we've got short memories on Tyne's side. I remember a certain Kevin Keegan standing on the steps of St James's director's entrance, arguing with the fans after he sold a certain Andy Cole. And not too long after that, he showed why and what we got in its place. But I couldn't see that happening with Isak. There is, at the moment, we have a really rare commodity in Alexander Isak, and we should be protecting it. We shouldn't be thinking about what we can get for it, who we can give it to, because replacing them would be a nightmare, in my opinion. So let's concentrate. They would look at it. There's no doubt about that. In this climate, but that doesn't say we have to do it. Maybe it would make them think about how rare he is, if nothing else, and think about how we could support him rather than thinking of getting rid of him. And I'd be honest, when everything I see about him, when he's on TV, when he's giving interviews, he's steeped in what we've got here, and he doesn't look as though he's somebody who wants to go somewhere. I mean, at times he speaks better Geordie than I do.
Okay, we've got to talk season tickets because the prices have, been released. We had the financial review, which came out over the weekend, and then we had the season ticket prices. Neil Calvert says, "Who's unhappy with season ticket prices?" Dave says, "Question for the lads: does the on-field progress reflect and justify the 15% raise in prices so far?" I mean, Mitch, this was always going to be an interesting summer to see what Newcastle did, and to see when the announcement came out. some people are going to be delighted. Paul Scunny Mag was paying £80.77 a month over 10 months, which made it £807.70 a year. Email that he got this week now says that he is Cat 2, Category 2. So he is now paying £763 a year. So it's an overall reduction for Paul, where he sits in the just in the strawberry corner. But it's also now taken over 12 months. So it's a monthly direct debit reduction too, which is fascinating. So for other people, I'm one of them. It's a big hike for me because we've gone on the 10-year deal, which has essentially been a 12-year deal because of COVID, etc. We've had no increase, and we're getting hit with everything at the same time. Paul, in his email to me this afternoon, said this really puts us in line with most other clubs now. He says, I can see people will be annoyed, but at least now we're heading in the right direction. Mine expired in the takeover season, so still technically under Ashley. So there's lots of happy people. There's lots of people not very happy. I think probably the comment here from Ian as well says, good evening from Krakow, having a pint with a Spurs fan. His season ticket's $950 and he's in the cheap seats. I've seen a lot of people saying on social media this week, well, if you don't want your season ticket, I'll have it. What's your feelings on the announcements for
There's a lot of moving parts to unpack here, so grab a beer and make yourselves comfortable. I think I've been grinding my gears on this for a couple of days. The first thing you've got to look at is the rise itself. In a time when other clubs in the Premier League are announcing price freezes, and at a time when the club say they want to have active discussion with the fans, and the FAB have come out and said that they utterly reject the 5% rise, basically makes a sham of what that is, and it turns it into a tick box exercise, an annoyance that ticks a box for the Premier League, and we're going to do what we want anyway. We've already discussed what they're doing to corporate boxes, 20%. I guess we could be said to be grateful that we're having a 20% rise. For those coming off the 10-year deal, it's almost like a 40% rise in some cases. It's not insignificant. The timing, they couldn't do anything about this. Timing was probably set in stone. Weren't expecting to be in a final, weren't expecting to be riddled with injuries and have Gordon sent off. So let's take the timing out of it. I don't think they've had a lot of control over the timing. What I do think, though, is that they're guilty of not really reading the room. This season, on a number of occasions, they've told us that we can't act because of PSR. We need more income. We need to be doing this. And yet, once again, it's the fans that seem to be the ones being leaned on. I was having to think about this morning, looking at sort of kit releases. Do you know how many different shirts we've actually released this season? It's something like 13.
What?
You've got home, you've got away, you've got third. You then have players issue, home, away, third. You've got the red training kit, the black training kit, the white training kit. You've got the white with magpie feathers pre-game shirt. You've got the black with magpie feathers pre-game shirt. You then have the Grandad colour retro re-release and the Adidas Originals long sleeve shirt. They're all Newcastle United badged shirts that could be bought, and that's before you go on to other merch and other items of clothing and other items of training wear, etc. And whilst hiding behind PSR to do that and then increase season ticket prices, seemingly against what the fan discussion has asked for, is a bit crass for me. What it's also now done, it's brought out further fractures in the fan base that have slowly been trying to be healed over the last few years. And yet we know, and we've told you all, they were still there and they were always ready to go, like our fan base is. Well, if you cannot afford it, I'll have your ticket. Well, I gave mine up under Ashley, so I'll have your ticket, and I've got mine back, and I'm a hero because I gave me ticket up under Ashley. It shows the weakness of a FAB that was appointed by effectively hand-picked individuals who don't understand what's gone on in recent history. That FAB should have been reaching out to everybody everywhere, trying to make sure that they were making inroads into getting the fan base reunited on common goals. Should have been one of their missions. Instead, you've got a collection of groups with personal and selective interests who really have only been interested in cozying up to the club and making sure that they don't get their relationship with the club taken away, and the foundation where they're inside with the foundation as well. If anybody on the FAB had an ounce of credibility, they'd have resigned today and not put out a statement. Interestingly, getting NUFC involved with it, the very body that most of them have campaigned against the club trying to have any communication with to this point. But now it's gone Pete Tong. Oh, they want everybody together and they want everybody. Do you know what? Darren Curry and Joe are bigger people than me because I know what I would have told them. Particularly the groups who campaigned actively with the club not to speak to NUFC because they weren't democratic, they weren't elected, and they weren't this, and they weren't that. It just shows all of those old things. You know, one of the groups in one of the bodies on the bottom of that statement very actively told people to give their season tickets up under Ashley. Yet when push come to shove, did they give theirs up? Did the buggery? In fact, some of them took more when the free tickets came available under Ashley. Yeah. They had your pants down, lads and lasses. When I was chair of the trust, I was pressed on a number of occasions to try and make statements to tell people to give their season tickets up. Why didn't I? I couldn't do it. So why the hell would I tell you to do what I could not do? But people did. And now here we are, looking at an interaction with the fans, which has just been totally ignored. Which I hate to say I told you so, but told you so. They will always do what they want to do. Every Premier League club views their FAB as an inconvenience. Tick box exercise to keep the Premier League happy, to keep an independent regulator at bay. So what are you going to do now? I know what you're not going to do. And as a fan base, the fractures are there. They're always ready to go. I'll have your ticket. You bugger off. I'm a better fan than you. It's the over 50s. They're the problem. Over 50s are the problem. Oh, anybody who's ever been to a game with me will tell you how many times I'm told to sit down, shut up, and watch me language by everybody around us. Yeah, I'm the problem, am I? It smacks to bigger problems within our fan base and a lack of unity and not being able to reach out to people and create a wave on the back of the positivity of the takeover that really in some respects we've had knocked out with all of the PSR stuff and the manoeuvres of the cartel in the Premier League. Yes, it's difficult. Yes, it's hard. The cats do resist being herded very, very hard indeed. But we need more people at that side of things who understand the subtleties of the fan base and the nuances and some of the recent history and how we can even begin to build bridges back in some places. Whilst the club, I just think are very guilty of not reading the room at all, which is really Again, past disappointing, but not surprising on my part. It feels once again that we're being leaned on as a fan base. And all of this is coming out in different ways. Oh, well, we need a singing section. Well, move everybody out of there. Well, what about the people who sat there for 20 years and they don't want to move? They like their seats. How do you deal with that in a respectful and genteel manner rather than say, I sing and stand up all through the game so you can piss off so I can have your seat next to me, mate? It just doesn't work like that. But also what breaks my heart is reading things like, I'm seeing people I know making comments like, well, this price rise for me is the difference between me sending my kids to their football school at the weekend or not. So I'm sorry my ticket's being given up. Does anybody in the ticket office going to care about that? No. Commercial will probably like that because there's another ticket they've got to do something with, potentially, if it's in one of the hot ticket areas where they can add a bit of money on, or stick it in with wings, or stick it in with a match day experience. That's what's upsetting me. I'm seeing fathers and sons looking at the structure saying, well, don't know if I can keep this going. I'm seeing people who've got multiple tickets saying, well, we might give some tickets up, but we're certainly not going to be able to keep all of them on. That isn't going to help this atmosphere problem that everybody's complaining about in any way, shape or form. Even with the potential of a new stadium on the horizon, that problem's here and now and relevant and absolutely current. And we lose sight that we've got to worry and deal with the current as well as the future. No matter how bright the future is, it's something that needs managed. Also disappointing to read in some of the small print about you might accept a move or a downgrade for medical reasons. But those medical reasons, who's going to be making that final decision? Well, I tell you what, I hope it's not the stewards who questioned somebody I know who has a disabled ticket on the way through the turnstiles a couple of weeks ago because he didn't look disabled enough. And these are real. I could show you the DMs. Oh, wait, I'm on about DMs. If you're a member of one of those bodies associated with the Fabs, don't you dare slide into my DMs and ask me for advice. Don't you even dare. You know who you are, by the way. Sorry.
Mitch, at the end of the day, it's all about opinions, and you've got and you've put it across very openly and very honestly, which I didn't expect anything different. I'll make no apologies for talking about tickets tonight because we have to do it. It's part of Newcastle's news this week. Steve, I read out Scunny Mag's little email to us today. I mean, my season ticket for next year, obviously because of where we sit, has gone up £600.
Mm-hmm. You know what, Steve? The game is awash with money. Absolutely awash. You mentioned the 10-year plan, which became a 12-year plan. When that came about, the Premier League was getting £3 billion from TV. The deal currently for the Premier League for TV is £6.7 billion. And that's just the domestic market. That doesn't include all of the foreign TV revenue that comes in that gets split in a slightly different way. So the game is awash with money. But it's the people at the top of the game who are taking the money. And it's the players that are taking the money. That's where the vast majority, I think Newcastle have managed to get, have we managed to get us down to 68 or 69% of our turnover is going in salaries. It was way up in the high 70s at one point during Ashley, but that's because we had a commercial department that was
smaller than Sunderland's.
Well, yeah, Smaller than the Sunderland's, yeah. Absolutely pathetic. The Newcastle needs a massive work on its commercial side, and at the moment it just seems to be relying on 3 or 4 major commercial deals, and then a few others. You mentioned there about the sponsors, and the fans have to divvy up. The fans could go. The club, a club like Newcastle United, and a club like Manchester United, and a club like Arsenal, they could go and they could be charging 20, because 20 is plenty. They could be charging entry of 20 quid, because the TV people want the atmosphere in the ground. They want full grounds. They don't want to end up in a situation like it is in France, where the grounds are half full, and that's why the TV revenue is no longer in existence. And also because they've got one club that just wins the league every single year. At least for a slightly more competitive that. Having said that, we've had a club that won it for 4 years in a row. But the game is awash with cash. And I suppose you could argue that it's how it's spent. And Mitch hit a good point earlier when we were talking there about the Club World Cup, the Club Championship that's coming in. And there's £1 billion going to be split in prize money between those clubs. $1 billion. $1 billion for split between, what is it, 20 odd clubs or something, if that. And that's for a 4 week in the summer, when there's no games on.
There's hell on in this region about it, because the UAE and Saudi teams, who are representative of the Asian Conference, are getting all the cash, and all the Korean and Japanese teams are kicking off big time about how that's going to skew the Asian Champions League next season.
Which is very interesting, because the sponsorship deal that they got, the TV deal that they signed, is with DAZN.
Who are owned by...
But there's a big question mark of where DAZN suddenly got $1 billion from, to be able to pump it in to the competition, because until 6 weeks ago, the competition was playing on a promise of prize money but no guarantee, which is quite ironic. But that's probably an argument for another day. In terms of the season tickets, yeah, it's a double whammy, Steve, for an awful lot of people. It's going to be very, very hard. It breaks my heart to hear, and I've seen similar messages from people about having to give up because the kids are, I'm going to take the daughter to dancing and the son to soccer school and this type of thing, and I cannot justify it with the wife or that type of thing, and to hear other fans going, well, if you didn't want it, I'll have it, and that I don't like that. I don't like to hear that. I think it's quite disingenuous and quite sad. And I think that maybe it's that society. Maybe we're turning into an I'm all right, Jack type of society. And I thought we were better than that. And I think it's quite ironic. And you've got the Supporters Trust, and we know that the problems the Supporters Trust have. But a couple of weeks ago, there's been a national campaign going on that seems to have worked with Liverpool, seems to have worked with Man City, seems to have worked with West Ham on the concessions and on price increases, which have all been stopped now, and are not going forward. The lads from the FSF, or the FSA rather, that had the protest, was very, very little mentioned on social media that there was going to be protests in Newcastle. There's been 2. I turned up at one of them. I think the protest was at 2:00 before a kickoff. I was working. I parked the car at 1:55, and by the time I got there, at 3 minutes past 2, it was over. It had gone. People had turned up and then scattered again, and I'm thinking, that's not what a protest's about. That's not the way it was in 2008. When it was a march up from the Bodega and Tilly's, and thousands of people joining, and then all meeting at the ground, and vociferously letting their feelings felt towards the people inside the ground, or the situation that they were protesting about. To have what was a feeble attempt at unrolling a banner standing there, having a photo op, and then gone within 3 minutes was just like, what? You know, and then I'll ask the question, how much lobbying have you done towards the football club about that, about the price rise, about the potential price rise? We all knew something was going to happen because it was happening right across the country. What we haven't had is we haven't had anyone taking away concession prices for Newcastle United or at Newcastle United yet. We haven't had the tax, although there has been some changes for some of that middle band, the 18 to 21s. I think some of those prices have been affected in certain parts of the ground where those concessions no longer exist. But there was a time when football fans rallied together and banded together and stood together when there was an injustice or a feeling of mistrust. But that seems to have gone by the wayside recently. It seems to be the crying over the spilt milk type of attitude. You shouldn't have done that. It's too late. It's been done. What lobbying did you do? What vociferous campaigning did you start at the start of the season when everybody knew there was going to be something coming because it was happening all over and all the vibes were there that there was going to be an attack on the ticketing prices? We all knew that the 10-year plan that was for some people 12 years was coming into an end and it was going to be a big hit. What lobbying did you do to the club to warn them and to push in front of them the impact it was going to have on your fellow supporters, whether they're members of your organisation or not? That's the question that I'm asking at this particular juncture. And it breaks my heart that people are being priced out of the football club that they love, because there will be people priced out of that.
George?
Well, it's interesting, man. I mean, I don't mind that personally. The rise has caused me and my family and friends to think about what it means to us. But the whole debate for me is corner shop economics, isn't it? For me, you look at all the money that's available to bring into a football club like Newcastle United. Have we really dug deep in all of that? And the deeper you get, the less the amount of money the fans pay looks, and the less it gets. If we're relying on the money that fans pay for the seats, they need to find 100 millionaires so they can charge them, £100,000 a game or something daft like that. That's the only way they'll ever impact PSR in any serious way. But it's strange economics for me, the way in which they do it. But the worst thing about it is the lads amplified more than I can, is the kind of rivalries and sad stories that you hear about it. And I mean, I'm reminded when we hear about that is that Neil and I used to go with 8 others. There were 10 of us used to go when Mr. Ashley was our owner, and 8 decided that they'd had enough of Mr. Ashley. Until he was gone, they wouldn't come back. Now, as it happens, I know that there are at least 3 or 4 of them would walk over glass to come back at the moment, but wouldn't want to take tickets from people who have just been forced out of it because they would feel just as bad as they did themselves. And incidentally, if you want to laugh, the reason they give up the Ashley season tickets was they couldn't have a plastic container for their mushy peas. That's what killed some of them off. That's how silly it was. But it was important at the time. And there's, it just beggars belief to me when the amount of commercial money that's available, the amount of money from abroad now that we're an international brand that's available, we don't seem to be tapping into, and yet we're crucifying the fans for shirts, for ticket money, and all of that. It's a nonsense. We should be looking at ways of opening the gates to fans to make our club part of the real community, not just for the few who can afford it. We joke about Manchester United and the prawn sandwich brigade. Well, we're not far off ourselves now. We're not far off ourselves. I just find that all painful. That now, imagine way back as a child, there used to be myself, father, 2 grandfathers, three uncles, and occasionally when one of the aunties felt she could stand it, go to the match and have a real day out. It wasn't just the match. We went for an occasion. We couldn't afford to do anything like that now. In this modern era, it would just be an impossibility. And where I sit in the ground, there are a couple of families sitting near me. I'd be very surprised if they're all back next year, if they've had to face the increase that I see in my seat and Neil's seat. So it's but it's as I say, it's corner shop economics for me. The impact of what the fans pay on the club's revenue and its impact on PSR is not the area that's the most lucrative. Perhaps if we looked at how poor the commercial revenue was and took a percentage of that, they might owe us money instead of taking more, because there certainly is a lot that's been missing. I mean, I wax lyrical when I think of the things that Stu Penman says about where he works in Bahrain, and that there are people there who would pay 5 million just to do this for Newcastle United, and not one, not two, but dozens of them. And yet, are we anybody actually following that up? I don't think so. And yet, the easy target is the fans. So I just find all of that quite sad, and I'm not going to say demoralising, because when it comes to Newcastle United, it take a lot to demoralise me. It shows the colours black and white, and I'm like a bull. I run at it. So, but it's just distressing when I hear the stories that you lads have relayed, and I hear myself that our football club could become one of the prawn sandwich brigade, and that would be dreadful.
I totally get what people are saying about, it is simple economics, as though somebody else would be in the queue who would be willing to pay that. I do get that. You know which part of the world I live in. I get it very, very, very clearly. What I don't like is the lack of sympathy and empathy. What I don't like is the almost mocking of fellow fans because of the position that they're being put in with this. I thought we were better than that.
Yeah, I think there's another aspect as well to this, Mitch, and I think that this is where the football club itself and the powers at the top have missed a trick, because at a time when rents and council tax and gas and electric and phones and water and food, all those things are going up, benefits are being cut for people, the country's in a financial sort of mess, or so it would appear. That's an opportunity, because you call yourself a community club and you make this big song and dance about a community club supporting your community. And I think that that would have been a great gesture for the football club to come out and say we know things are difficult, and I think they would have got an awful lot more back in publicity and an awful lot more back in that empathy aspect, if they'd done that, instead of just going, you know what, lads, if you want us to break the PSR and you want us to start going, you're going to have to put even more money out your pocket, and you're really going to have to dig deep, because commercially we've reached the top of where we can. There's nothing else that we seem to be able to do, and we've brought out 13 strips this season, or 13 shirts, and there's going to be another 13 next year, by the way, because if there was 13 this year, you can guarantee there'll be 13 next year. And
well, there'll be more, because we'll move up to tier 1, so we'll have a lot more original stuff.
There is that, and also, Mitch, what we forgot about was some of the training and rain gear, and that's also tagged in with that you can get, so that was an opportunity for the football club. They didn't take it, whether it's because they were deaf to it, or whether or not they just didn't get the message, or whether the message never went out to them in the first place. To think about that and to put that and look at the whole situation around, I'm not too sure. Maybe that goes back to my first point, which was about the lobbying and who lobbied the football club and what lobbying took place, and who actually got into the football club and said, this is a problem. There must be a better way to go about it than the way that you're possibly going to be doing, and having that proper adult conversation on a level playing field with them listening to the words are being said, instead of the talking after the event, which is, we've done this, and now suddenly having the balls to stand up and going, that's not nice, that's horrible, that we didn't agree with it, it's too late. The horse is bolted, lads.
Okay, we've got 15 minutes left. Thanks for everyone who's contributed in the chat. Some great comments coming in. We can't get to them all, as you know, on a Friday night, but we do have to look ahead to Newcastle United's game, which is on Monday this weekend. We are taking on West Ham United away at the London Stadium. It's an 8 o'clock kickoff. It is live on Sky Sports, and as usual, all the away end tickets are sold, 3,000 of them. Anyone using the away ticket transfer scheme, it opens 8 o'clock today, but at the request of West Ham, closes at 9 a.m. on Monday, which is earlier than usual. Speaking to the media today, Eddie Howe confirmed that Alexander Isak is fit and has trained all week. Tino Livramento and Kieran Trippier have also been training this week, so they are both expected to be available for selection. Anthony Gordon begins his 3-game suspension, while Lewis Hall and Sven Botman miss out due to injury. Jamal Lascelles is still a long-term absentee, but there was news today that he is back in some kind of shape now, so it shouldn't be too long before we see Jamal Lascelles at least getting a mention at the training ground. Will he make it before the end of the season? Who knows? As for West Ham, Paqueta is available for selection. Kufal is doubtful. Antonio, Somerville and Fulkrug are all out. Graham Potter's side are looking for their third successive Premier League win. They beat Arsenal 1-0 and then beat Leicester 2-0. They did get knocked out of the FA Cup by Aston Villa, and they've had 11 days between that game and Monday's game. At home this season, West Ham have lost 7, won 5 and drawn 2. They've recorded just 2 clean sheets during those games. No Joe this week. He's having a week off. But we do have Toon Stato, and we do have Scunny Mag, who was also going to give us his rundown on the ground. But Toon Stato, over to you.
Hello everyone, with the key stats before the Monday night game between West Ham and Newcastle, a crucial game for the Europe qualification, even Champions League qualification for our beloved Newcastle, 1 week before the big final. Now, when it comes to Monday night games, the first game this season against West Ham was a Monday night game and we lost 2-0 at St. James's Park. Actually, West Ham have not played 2 games on a Monday night in the same season against the same opposition for more than 7 years. And the last time they did the double over us was back in 2019 under Rafa Benitez, when they won 2-0 at their stadium. Actually, since then, Newcastle has not lost away at London Stadium, with 3 wins and 2 draws in the last 5 games there. Actually, West Ham away is the second favorite ground or away game for Newcastle in the Premier League. Only against Tottenham away we have registered more wins. Of course, both at White Hart Lane and at the Tottenham Stadium now. When it comes to West Ham, they have 2 wins in a row against Arsenal and against Leicester. They have not won 3 in a row since the days of David Moyes back in December 2023. When it comes to our favorite club, we lost the last 2 games away from home to Man City and Liverpool, 4-0 and 2-0, as you well know. Last time Newcastle lost 3 games in a row away from home without scoring was back under Steve Bruce in December 2020 and January 2021. When it comes to managers, Graham Potter started very well as a Brighton manager against Newcastle with 5 games unbeaten. But since then, in the last 3 games, both at Brighton and at Chelsea, he lost the last 2 and drew 1 from the last 3 games. Harvey Barnes has 6 goals against West Ham, 2 of them as Newcastle player from last season. It's his most favourite opposition, and with Anthony Gordon suspended, it's very likely that he will get a start on Monday. How are the lads?
Thank you, Andre. And now it's time for Scunny Mag.
Hi folks, Scunnymag Paul here with another away day guide. This one is for the London Stadium. If you're making the Monday night trip down to watch us take on West Ham, everything you need is coming up. Okay, West Ham. For those of you coming on train, you've got the overground service, which has now been named and coloured, so it's the double striped blue line called Mild May, and that actually terminates where you need to be at Stratford, and you can pick that up at various points around the city. If you prefer to use the tube, the Central and Elizabeth lines run into Stratford Underground Station. Your Elizabeth line is probably fastest, but it picks up at less points, and all of those leave pretty much a 15 to 20 minute walk to the ground. There is a stop just before Stratford called Hackney Wick, and that's handy for some of the pubs. If you're driving in, there's a large amount of parking above the Westfield Mall, and your postcode for it is E21EJ, with the 3 words of Property Haven to get you to the entrance to the car park. And if you are parking there, that's also Stratford International Station that the overground services terminate at. You've got a single away-friendly pub called the Tap East, which is about the size of 2 postage stamps, one inside, one out. Clear Move Quench will get you just outside the beer garden, but I think once most people find that, they head up to the ground because it's going to take a long time to get served. But the stadium does have plenty of options once you've gone through security, so you should be able to get a few drinks in there. But failing that, if you do get off the Hackney Wick overground stop, it's more of a relaxed kind of atmosphere. There's mixed fans mingling around, a bit of a hipster area, but it's alright for a drink on a match day. As you come in from the city, you'll be on the north platform, exit the station from there, head straight up the road, you'll find the Beer Merchants tap. Cuts bought badly, it'll get you to the front door, and that's a decent size. But as you head towards the ground from there, under the railway line, immediately as you come out the other side, turn left there and head straight along, you'll find a little courtyard with a few eateries and bars in there. One of them's the Howling Hops Brewery, also known as the Tank Bar. That's just on your right as you get in at Magic Photo With. And then a little further on towards the end of that courtyard, the Crate Brewery and Pizzeria. Mini Duck Body will get you to the front of that. When you are ready to head up to the ground, you want to be on the southwest corner. You'll go through one of the outer security checkpoints. Agrees flying zones will get you to the away fans entry, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.
Thank you, Scunnymag. Okay, here we go. Looking ahead to these games, we've got George, and are you back? Oh, he's back. Mitch,
Yes, I
Somebody...
took a parcel in from my neighbours. They won a postcode lottery prize. So
all right, classic. Okay, over to you, Mitch. Give us your feelings on this game, mate.
Obviously, what Scunnymag didn't tell you is the chairman's entrance at West Ham is another 3 words of big purple dildo. I want to see us go there and get a performance. We need lifted. After the week we've had, we need a lift, we need a boost. And I don't think you win anything by being shy and protecting players ahead of the final. All you're going to do is actually, if you put that in some of the players' minds, they'll put themselves at risk. They'll not go into challenges, they'll dangle their foot in. That's the easiest way to get injured. I want to see we play our best team and play hard. We owe them one. Our home performance against West Ham, particularly in the second half, was actually one of our poorest of the season at home. I don't think we managed a shot on target in 45 minutes. I think it was absolutely, frankly, dreadful. So we're owed. And I think we're owed on the back of some of the performances in the last few weeks. And from the, I know Eddie doesn't give much away in press conferences, but one thing's for sure is I don't think we're going to be going there half-arsed, which is just what we need to do. We need something out of it, and we need to see performance and get everybody lifted up a little bit again.
Okay, what's the dice say?
The dice says, for what it's worth, 0-1.
0-1. What do you reckon, Mitch?
Draw. 1 each.
Okay, Steve.
I thought the director's box, 3 words was gobby brassy lady, but that's just me. It's going to be an interesting game. They've had a couple of decent results lately, but as we've just heard, their home form isn't anything startling. They are certainly a team who, when they go down a goal down at home, seem to struggle to get themselves back up. They're a totally different kettle of fish away from home. It's weird. They did play really well against us while we played really poorly. We were completely opposite to them in the home fixture earlier in the year, or the back end of last year. It's for me. I was going to talk about it earlier, but I think we're listening at the press comments. I wonder whether Eddie's playing a strange little game of bluff. And if it was me, I wouldn't play Isak on Monday. I'd play Wilson up front, but I wouldn't play Murphy either. I would play Sula down the right. I want both of them to get games under their belt. I look at the way Asula ran the likes of Birmingham ragged when he got the opportunity, and he was non-stop. And I'd like to see Asula given that chance from the start again. And I'd put Barnes on the left. And I'd have a midfield of Joe Linton, Bruno, and Tonali to back them up, because I think they would need backing up at times. And I thought that because of the way things have been, I thought Livramento has been struggling at times, and I'd stick Matt Target on the left, and stick Trippier on the right, and I'd play Byrne and Shaw in the middle, and I'd put Dubravka in goal. There would be one eye. There's obviously one eye on that lineup to do with the final. There's another eye that's saying give players a run out before the final, and give certain players a rest before the final, and make your decision, Eddie, that little bit much harder, and make the squad that much more on their toes when it comes to the rest of the week, and keep them hungry. And I was actually going to say 1-1 as well, but I'm going to change that, because Mitch has gone for 1-1, and I'm going to go for a 2-1 away win.
2-1 away win. Okay, George.
Well, being the optimist that I am, I'm still happy in where I want to see. Instead of players worrying about the final when they're playing elsewhere, I want to see players who are trying to make sure they're in the final. Yeah. As Steve said, let's see players who are taking the legs off West Ham so that they're in the team that plays at Wembley. And I too would make sure that Asula was in there and getting some time, because if his time's not now, there's a serious question to be asked at the end of the season about that young man, because he's not so young anymore either. But I thought his Birmingham show would have got him more game time, but it clearly hasn't. So I'm quite optimistic, and I daren't give you my 3 words about Lady Brady, because it would get the channel banned. She's standing up in the House of Lords now, still complaining about our Saudi Arabian owners. Do you know that? And trying to press the Minister of Sport to reopen our entry into the Premiership. How dare she? How dare she? But never mind, she dares out. If you can get into the House of Lords the way she did, well, fine. And they get the ground for next and out. So yeah, I'm optimistic. I want them to have a go and make their mark, so that they're, as Steve said, giving Eddie Howe a headache as to who he can play and who he can't play, and make their mark at Wembley. And there's still something to play for, in my view. And let's suck it to them. And I also am going for a 2-1 victory for Newcastle.
I'll also say, Steve, the other rationale behind my lineup thinking there is that we've been fairly stale off the bench in the last few games. And I think that if we're going into a final the following Sunday, I want some of those stale players to have had a run out. I want them to have had the opportunity to stretch their legs and put a little pressure on, so that there's a number of little factors in my thinking. Whether Eddie's on the same line, we'll find out on Monday night.
Of course we will. Okay, we are going to be back live on Sunday with the professionals, 5 o'clock till 6:30. Tomorrow will be those were the days. Me and George have been busy over the last couple of weeks, putting a few of them to bed. So you will have a chance to watch one of them tomorrow night at 6 o'clock. And then next week, I have to get my head around the shows. I'm quite busy myself next week, so we need to work out everything we're doing. I can say that there will be an Amigos next Friday, a cup Amigos on Friday, and it will be Stu Penman on here, along with me, Mitch, Steve, and George. For obvious reasons, there won't be a professionals on Sunday, probably because we'll not be able to speak English. Okay, thanks to everybody for watching. Been a great show, been a great week, actually, despite the doom and gloom that surrounded Newcastle United's ground this week with injuries and various other things. It's been a happier week on NUFC Matters. Thanks for everyone contributing. See you all on Sunday. Take care, guys.
Thank you,
Yes,
everybody.
everyone.
Good night, lads. Good.